You're watching SABC News live from Johannesburg. Here are your headlines at this hour. A 7-year-old boy from Tabanchu in the Free State has died after he and his 3 friends allegedly consumed snacks bought from a local spaza shop. Motorists warned to face fuel hikes from the 1st of January next year, with 93-octane petrol increasing by 19 cents a litre, 95-octane climbing to 12 cents a litre. Further afield now, headlines at this hour. An aircraft carrying 167 people has crashed at an airport in South Korea, killing at least 167 people. Well, very good afternoon. Welcome to the week ahead with myself, Liesl Wilson. We are live from our studio in Johannesburg. I'm here with you for the next 2 hours. If you would like to participate with us for the next 2 hours, please give us a call, share your thoughts, or you can even ask a question. The number to dial 011 714 0680, or you can end off in 81 or 82. But as always, we are in the first hour of the show. So let's get into those top stories now. So starting things off on a somber note, a 7-year-old boy from Tabanchu has died after he and his 3 friends allegedly consumed snacks bought from a local spaza shop. The 4 were admitted to Albert Moraka Hospital on Christmas Day for medical attention, but they were later released. The boy died at home later in the day after complaining of a stomach ache. The other 3 have since been cleared from the suspected food poison. Other news now, fuel prices are set to increase from the 1st of January next year. That's with 93-octane petrol increasing by 19 cents a litre and 95-octane climbing by 12 cents a litre. Diesel prices will also rise by as much as 10.5 cents a litre. Liquefied petroleum gas increases by 13 cents per kilogram. However, illuminating paraffin will decrease by 13 cents a litre. So the Mineral Resources and Energy Department has attributed the price increases to the weaker rand that's trading against the US dollar. The year 2024 has been described as one of the most difficult years in the history of the country's labour force. This comes as workers had to endure the uncertainty that came with the applications of Section 189 notices in various sectors of the economy. Public sector workers also ending the year with no agreement on salary increases occurred. Workers' representatives, bodies including NUMSA, Labour Federation, COSATU have all accused the formation of a government of national unity as the biggest threat to workers' gains. Let's take a look at this.
South Africa's labour force has described 2024 as the most difficult year for workers that have had to contend with an uncertain economy and threats to job security. The year also saw workers taken to the streets as a show of discontent. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, NUMSA's Phakamile Tlhubi-Majola, says the Section 189 process was abused by employers, with some deliberately flouting the Labour Relations Act.
We don't just negotiate wages, we negotiate conditions of work. So we negotiate to make sure that the workplaces are safe so that employers can't do as they please. And when employers go and undermine that by hiring undocumented foreign nationals, they are undermining that entire process. And we've seen a lot of that. We've seen a lot of arrogant employers actually acting on that. George collapse happened a couple of weeks before the elections, if I'm not mistaken. And what have been the penalties for those construction companies for what they've done? I mean, people died.
The National Union of Mine Workers, NUM, marked 42 years in existence and has also found itself worried about a decline in union membership. The Union Secretary General Mpho Phakedi says despite the difficult labour market, the union managed to score some victories for workers in various sectors.
We opened a year with an agreement that was something that we managed to close very early in the year. That is the agreement with Harmony. That is a 5-year agreement, that something that was beginning to be a new thing in the gold sector. You will appreciate that the metal sector is going under trouble, is going under difficult time, but under those circumstances, at least we have secured something that is over inflation for workers, an increase that is over inflation. We have done that also in other companies such as your Marion Robert, where we think we have done well. You look at recently we have signed another agreement with Kopanang. That is one gold mine in Orkney. We are happy also that we have secured a better deal for workers. We got 900 for lowest levels. That will go 900 rand. That will go to their basic salaries. And we pushed to get over an inflation increase for miners, artisans, and officials. But of course, there are things that we could have wanted, and there are things that are process issues.
Labour Union Solidarity also gave a reflection, worried about state-owned enterprises and their impact on the economy.
We've settled between 5 and 7.5. That was more or less where the settlement lie. But in the end, I think we found there were a lot of agreements where we had to look at the sustainability of the employer, and obviously, improving remunerations. The two most difficult negotiations was one on mining and one in metal engineering. So mining was Sibanya for various reasons. They are not such a well-run company on the gold side as Harmony. So that was a tough one to try and avoid a strike at all costs. So we had to settle for 5.5, which was still above CPI. But, that was very difficult because there were a lot of interpersonal issues. The only one in the retail was the fast-moving goods. It was under the Chemical Bargaining Council. And then we settled for 6.4, which was a very good settlement.
COSATU remains the largest trade union federation and registered its disappointment on its alliance partner, the ANC's decision to work with the DA in the government of national unity. The federation says workers find themselves compromised in the 7th administration.
You can see yourself that workers after the election have been facing with a number of challenges led by DA. Business people, most of them, they are DA. They went publicly to challenge the NHI. They went publicly to challenge the BELA. They went publicly to challenge the national minimum wage. They went publicly to challenge the implementation of the Employment Equity. They have went publicly to challenge the amendment in terms of the Labour Relations Act, where as COSATU at NETLEC level, we are moving to improve condition of workers and the servicing of workers at the workplace. But we can say there are areas where we're able to improve, we're able to make inroads in relation to the two-pot system. Workers this year were able to cash or to apply for the two-pot system. Almost about 37 million has been, or 37 billion has gone out to workers. What we have submitted, which was an overlook from our side or oversight from our side, was that we did not take the matter of the tax seriously. We have now presented the matter of tax, and our call has been made, our submission has made to Treasury and SARS, and that tax for the next application of the two-pot system next year, workers, this money that workers are taking should be free, should be tax-free.
Public sector workers remained locked in wage negotiations going into 2025. The workers' wage demand is now at 7.5 from 12% compared to the government's offer of 4.7%. The workers say they are hoping for better conditions in 2025, with COSATU saying Apex will be better wages for public sector workers, a tax-free two-pot withdrawal, and a push to make it harder for employers to enforce retrenchments. Katlego Logodi, SABC News in Johannesburg.
Right, so today's newspaper segment will be a little bit different. 2024 has been eventful on the political and economic front, and in some instances unprecedented. But the ripple effects will continue to play out in 2025. And so today we will remember some of the biggest news stories of the year and also how they impacted society at large. To help us unpack this, we have star editor Sfiso Mahlangu. Sfiso, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here on the SABC at this hour.
Good afternoon to you, Lizo, and your viewers, and a happy festive season to you.
Thank you. Happy festive season to you too. I dare say happy given what's happened this year, but perhaps we can look at some of the highs and the lows and navigate into the new year. So from your vantage point, let's break it down. What really stood out for you in the year of 2024 in terms of news, the biggest news stories of the year?
It was a hectic news year, and for journalists like yourself and myself, it's been an interesting year. It's been a hard day at the office, so to speak. It was an election year, the May 29 election, so it's been very interesting, leading to what we define as the government of national unity. Some expressing that it's not a government of national unity, it's a DA-ANC coalition. To the building collapses, the gas burst in Johannesburg, that was a significantly big story for ourselves as a Star. But interestingly, once again, the formation of Mkhonto weSizwe and how it took the margins that it took at the election and just the growth of that party from nowhere. The decline in numbers of the EFF, Floyd Shivambu leaving the EFF and becoming the Secretary General of MK, Mkhonto weSizwe party has been a newsworthy notation, I think, for us. But the sad part, of course, were the deaths of many in South Africa, many eminent persons, personalities and people of interest, defined as celebrities, of course. And, of course, the Zamazamas who are still stuck in Stilfontein by the hundreds or the thousands. We don't have the exact number. Many who have come up this morning, and the story just refuses to go away. A story of starvation, of foreign immigrants in South Africa, a story of poverty and joblessness, a story of perhaps porous borders, but also a story of the lack of policy and the lack of policing so far as old, dilapidated mines are concerned.
Cecil, thank you. I mean, it's hard to break down, this year into, given the time we had, but thank you for honing in on some of those big stories. I want to just go back quickly to the election results that had been announced. You mentioned, the results that had come out, the ANC dipping to 40.18%, the DA 21.81%. MK, surprisingly rising to 14.58%, and then the EFF also dipping to 9.52%. In what ways was this a test for our democracy? And if we're going to look at navigating from here into, particularly as we edge closer to local government elections, what litmus test has been applied? What are the lessons learned as well?
I think democracy has been put to the test and people have exercised their democratic right. In a constitutional democracy like ours, we say that the electorate decides. In this year's election, the electorate certainly decided. They decided the ANC, the DA, and MK in that order. Of course, there were a lot of contests because during the elections, you remember the number screen disappeared for 2 hours. A bone of contention for me because the IEC would just not take responsibility. There were, of course, 79 objections. The IEC decided to declare the elections anyway. The IEC chairperson, responding to a question, said the markets are waiting. Now, I think that puts a stain on democracy because we want the process to be transparent. We expect the process to be fair and impartial. We expect the process to be thorough. And if there are objections from even the smallest of parties, we expect the IEC, which is our commission, to take this into their guild, to investigate and to provide the nation with a good report, which they didn't do. So I don't know why they rushed to declare the elections, because constitutionally they have 7 days after the election to do so. But be that as it may, the ANC scored under 50%, which led us to the government of national unity. But I think democracy was tested because the people went out to vote. And of course, there were many things wrong with this election. I think the closure time, 9 p.m., people had not voted. The queues were very, very long. There was, talks of miscalculations in many wards and things like that. There was political violence and intolerance and intolerance in part of the country, but people went out and voted. And so democracy was put to the test. The EFF joined the fourth number of the electorate, the fourth number to be voted for in South Africa. The ANC and the DA, Fikile Mbalula and Helen Zille, signed the document of intent, and the GNU was formed. So it does show us that when people vote, when people go out there and exercise their right, and the IEC doing what it should, that the people do govern. This does suggest that, of course, South Africa is better than Zimbabwe in that. It's better than Mozambique in that, from what we're seeing happen in Mozambique and the shocking images that are coming out of that country, our neighboring country. So it is to say that South Africa has done well. But I must say, Lisa, that even in that, the Electoral Commission of South Africa has let us down.
Sviso, I know that there were also, many legal challenges that the IEC had to face in the build-up to the 29th of May elections. But just for the interest of time, I want to look at another democratic element that came into the fore during these elections. That's obviously the role of the media. How do you think, it was covered by our local media? What recollections do you have as well, given some of the incidences and also the highlights that you've alluded to?
And I think it's an interesting question, Liesl, because the role of the fourth estate wasn't just this year limited to South Africa. I mean, we remember the journalists in Gaza, the journalists in Palestine, the slain journalists, the bureau chief of Al Jazeera who was slain in the wars. We consider the journalists in Ukraine and the journalists throughout all of Africa. Journalists been killed in the DRC this year. We remember the plight of all media professionals across the world because the media is the mirror of society. In South Africa, we're privileged because the media can do its job partly. Some of us have experience with politicians trying to get in the way of stopping stories, sending threats of murder and assassinations and all of that. But the media continues to do its work. And I think as part of our democracy, we must do all we can to protect the fourth estate, to protect the integrity of media, and to protect the craft that journalists do to mirror the nation. The media, of course, has a responsibility. The responsibility of the media is to be non-racial. And we have media, of course, in this country that continues on a racial divide. We've got media that protects certain political parties and political factions. You know that if you read on a particular story that it will be negative to black people and black professionals. We have experience with that. So whilst we praise the media for doing its work, we must mirror ourselves. And I think we must talk back to each other and express our disdain at some media in this country. And there has been an expression, I think, that some online publications have taken approaches to be anti-black or anti-black professionals, right? You remember how many media organizations in this country had to apologize to Matsela Koko and Brian Molefe and Dr. Iqbal Survey because of their stance and because of their opinions and because of their reporting, which wasn't found to be fair and factual and impartial. We've also found that the Press Council of South Africa wasn't fair and impartial. We've also found that the Press Council itself was lacking in many, many ways. So I want to articulate this point as the media mirrors the nation, the media must also mirror itself because there are deep divisions, political divisions in South Africa's media agencies. Yeah. And I think that must be exposed.
Sviso, just picking up on what you said, I want to take the conversation further because we're also looking at the way, media is accessible and consumed. Some publications we saw this year continued printing, but now they've opted to go online. What's your view on that? Should we be expecting the Star to follow suit perhaps in the near future? I mean, 2025, what do you see coming on that front?
I mean, it's a tough day for the media in general in a post-COVID situation. It's a tough day for print media. But people were prophesying the death of print media 40 years ago. It's still standing. We learned with sadness of the last edition of the City Press, the broadsheet of the City Press, the report, the Daily Sun, and that is for many reasons. Social media is one of them. The digitalization of media is another. We also have a friend who's actually an enemy, a frenemy called AI, which will grow in 2025. So, of course, we'll continue to print the Star. We'll continue to give you, investigations and expressions. We'll continue to be that broadsheet that people have consumed for 136 years. But it is truly so that it's not an easy day for print media. The digital age presents certain challenges. Some of those challenges are the accuracy of news. We live in the world of artificial intelligence, and of course fake news. Artificial intelligence contributes, of course, to the era of fake news, which era we are. So it's not going to be an easy day for print media, but certainly they're not going to wipe us all out. And we'll continue to work and to publish. And also because it means that we must refresh our digital footprints. We see many organizations in media join the digital space and join social media. That is an element that we've got to adapt. We must do broadsheet and run content digitally. This is what the age demands. But this is not the end of newspapers, certainly. It's not the end of publishing, whether it's newspapers or magazines or books. We are not there yet. As I say, they prophesied this 40 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. But we continue to publish. So we will write and be damned.
Well, Sviso, I'm going to have to leave the conversation there, but I know that there are still many more questions and answers. But thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us here on this last Sunday edition of the show. I'm wishing you all the best as well for the near future. And looking forward to the possibilities and the probabilities as we approach 2025 and beyond. Sviso Mahlangu this afternoon, the Star editor, weighing in on some of the big stories making headlines and what we can expect for the year 2025 and beyond. So as we leave that conversation there now, we continue with more news. Further afield, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz Sunday sent condolences to the families of those killed in a deadly plane crash in South Korea. South Korean authorities have switched from rescue to recovery operations following a deadly air crash at Muan Airport this morning. At least 167 people were killed when Jeju Air Flight 7C2216 barely landed and veered off the runway, erupting in a fireball as it slammed into a wall at the airport in the southern part of the country. Workers in protective suits and masks combed the area near the crash site while soldiers searched through bushes as well as fields. An excavator has also been picking up debris near the tail of the plane, the only recognizable part remaining from the crash. Now, the plane was arriving from the Thai capital with 181 people on board. 2 people, both crew members, were rescued, and officials have suggested the rest are presumed dead. Welcome back. The week ahead continues. In other news, according to the city of Johannesburg, loud music, noise complaints and fireworks have been a contentious matter around the festive season. Now, the city's law enforcement agencies will be on high alert on the New Year's Eve to monitor the situation around noise pollution and the use of fireworks, as it might constitute a hefty fines or even arrest. Joining us to discuss the city's bylaws, we are joined by Nana Khadebe, who is the spokesperson for the city of Johannesburg. Nana, festive greetings to you. Thank you for your time. Welcome here to the SABC at this hour.
Festive greetings to you too. A hectic month where we have to learn what to do with bylaws. So we are now at the city's shops, looking at the shops that are selling by fireworks to ensure that they have the right storage. The fireworks have to be kept in a glass cabinet, and they have to have the right firefighting equipment in order, and certificates ensuring that they're selling the right fireworks and they have the right packaging for the fireworks.
Okay, so thank you for painting that picture. I know that there are other elements to consider as well. So I want to look at the city of Joburg having recorded about 696 complaints, and that's since the start of December, the 1st of December. So talk to us about these numbers. What are some of the most common complaints before we get into some of the other bylaws?
We know that around this time, kids are at home. And you'd find that most of the calls that we respond to, some become hawks calls. We send vehicles to respond to an incident only to arrive and find that that incident is not there, which also increases the numbers of incident calls that we receive on each month. But again, we know around this time, people are moving around to different areas where we'd have to respond to accidents, and as well people go to leisure places, would have drowning incidents around this time, an increase in number of drownings, but this year we've not seen so much. We know that baptisms, swimming pools, they're full around this time of the year, and this is when we say parents need to be vigilant, and those that are going to do traditional baptisms and any other baptisms on the lakes and rivers, take precautions. We have seen last year the numbers had risen to more than 200 in a year for all the people that had died on our lakes and rivers.
Nana, I know that's an element to consider beyond the fireworks and beyond, some of the usage of pools and water. Even ravines and rivers, beyond, the traditional baptisms and the drownings that also possibly occur. I know that there's the issue of noise pollution because you've got local pubs and taverns or places of entertainment during this time in particular, they tend to play loud music until dawn, so the time limits are in question. Talk to us about what the law also says about this concerning noise pollution, the revving of engine cars, sound systems, etc. What should people be wary of?
We have been going around to different blitz with different departments from the city. This would be your environmental, the Johannesburg Metro Police, who are responsible for the noise bylaws, who would be able to say to people until what time they can make such a noise. We have been visiting different liquor outlets, places of entertainment, to ensure that people are aware of the elements that leads to bylaws being infringed or bylaws that cannot be done after a certain time. Even with fireworks itself, people think that fireworks can be started at any time. And according to bylaws, you can only have fireworks on the 31st and the 1st. And after that, it's illegal to have fireworks.
Nana, so the responsibilities then of the community members and even residents regarding fireworks, you've now spoken to that. But if we're talking about where one can purchase them, use them at homes, etc. I mean, early on you alluded to how it needs to be stored, but just perhaps walk us through some of the do's and don'ts on that front. And should people be found violating the law, are you in a position to also tell us what the fines entail or the possible arrests as well?
Definitely, there is a possible arrest for anyone that is selling bylaws on the streets, and you are not allowed. Bylaws are no fireworks. Fireworks are supposed to be kept in a storage, locked, where they can just not be accessed by anybody. So you can't just stand on the road and sell fireworks. And we have to also look, people that are living close by to petrol stations, you cannot have fireworks nearby, at least 500 meters away from petrol station. Then you can be able to have your fireworks. And we also need to be wary. There are people that have pets, there are small kids. So let's be vigilant. Let's accommodate everyone and ensure that people are safe. We've had incidents where kids have lost their fingers. Some have lost their eyes. Let's be vigilant and ensure that when kids are using fireworks, parents are there to supervise.
Okay, thank you for actually speaking to that, because I wanted to look at, in addition to the loud boom and bang sounds that we obviously hear during the time when the firecrackers are released, there's also causes for concern regarding health risks, perhaps some of the toxins that are released into the air, but also in relation to animals. What are the do's and don'ts there, particularly in protecting them? You've mentioned kids need to be supervised, but what about, and let's include animals in this conversation as well.
Definitely. We have had incidents where we've seen that animals do get hurt, but we do advise those that have pets, that have animals, to keep them indoors so that they're safe. Because at that time, the bylaw does allow people to be able to do fireworks within that certain period between the 31st and the 1st of January. So let's ensure that our pets are indoors or are taken at a safe place where they cannot be harmed by the fireworks.
Nana, let me wrap up, because I want to ensure compliance, education and information is key. And so besides the issuing of fines, arresting people as well, what other measures are being taken to educate the public at large about the bylaws during this festive season? I mean, the 31st and the 1st, it's just about 3 days away from us.
We have started since the beginning of festive season. We have visited different mall campaigns just to be talking to the general public, to tell them how to use fireworks, what is it that needs to be done. But we also do say the most important thing is to buy them from a reliable shop where they are stored correctly, where they have a certificate. Then we can ensure that the fireworks that are there, they are safe, because we'd have different departments that would have visited those shops, and not just only EMS, but other shops to check if they do comply. So compliance is the most important. So where you buy, if the shop complies, then you'll be able to have the right product.
Nana, we're wishing you and your team all the best during this particular time. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for outlining some of those measures. I'm going to leave the conversation there for now and perhaps let you get back to work. But Nana Khadebe this afternoon, spokesperson for the City of Johannesburg, speaking about, just some of the bylaws and how to adhere to them, the education measures that have been underway as well to educate the public at large, and of course just some of the do's and don'ts during at this time that will affect humans, children and animals alike. Let's leave it there. We'll take another ad break and be right back after this. All right, welcome back. We're going to continue now. Hammanskraal continues to face a severe water crisis, with residents still unable to safely drink tap water. Now, in response, the city of Tshwane has initiated a 4-phase project to deliver clean water, with full completion expected by mid-2025. So today we're going to be delving into this ongoing challenge and the efforts underway to resolve it. Let's get an update now on the water situation in Hammanskraal, where residents are still facing those challenges despite recent efforts to improve access to clean water.
Water problems in Hammanskraal span almost 2 decades. The crisis came to a head more than a year ago, following the deaths of just over 30 people from a cholera outbreak. Jacob Mulauzi's family in Majaneng village is among those who've lost a loved one due to the waterborne illness. Mulauzi's niece, Debatso, had just secured a post as a teacher when tragedy befell the community north of Pretoria.
She had completed her tertiary education and was about to start teaching at the local primary school in the same week that she died of cholera.
And more than a year later, there's still no hope of clean water from their taps.
As residents of Hammanskraal, I think we can all see that we'll never get water. Instead, there's just going to be a lot of changes and delays.
Or 10 months, June next year. Delays in refurbishing the Rooival wastewater treatment plant over the years have left residents like Mulauzi relying on water tankers. Following years of failure and finger-pointing, government finally launched phase 1 of 4 of the Klipdrift potable water package plant last month. The 758 million rand project is being implemented by Magalies Water. The current completed phase will bring 12.5 megalitres of potable water into the bulk supply scheme. Although water is available, Further testing is required to ensure that the quality is not compromised.
We are flushing the system, and we have been detecting water that is not compliant for human consumption. Turbidity has been one of the non-compliance issues, and color has been one of the non-compliance issues. And we have also detected some E. coli in some of the tests that we have conducted.
We have allowed Tshwane, DWS as well as Machalis to do water testing, and when they do that water testing on a daily basis, they must publicize the results so that by the time we say to people water is ready to be and drinkable, we must all attest to that.
The process must be run, and it will be run through our network, which is Tshwane. It will take time. We cannot estimate and tell lies to the community, but we are prepared to give you a wonderful Christmas present as the residents of Hammanskraal.
But this still seems like a pie in the sky.
They've said to us they will come back and test that water because all departments are not satisfied about the quality of water. So we are still waiting. As our councillor, Bonzo Modisa, says, we'll be getting an early Christmas.
The water crisis has, on the other hand, created business opportunities.
We first started selling small bottles and the business started growing. Then it got very busy with people now buying frequently because our water here is not good.
Meanwhile, the state-of-the-art health facility is also dependent on Tshwane's water tankers and will hopefully access clean water by June next year after the completion of the 3 outstanding phases.
It is fully finished. So that's why we say by June next year, everything will be all right.
Earlier in the year, the public protector commended Tshwane municipality for making strides in addressing water and sanitation challenges in Hammanskraal. The completed phase is expected to supply residents of Marokolong, Ramotse, Kekana Gardens, Kurube Unit 9 and Babelegi Industrial, as well as parts of Mandela Village and Bridgeview informal settlement. But until this dream is realized, residents have no choice but to continue relying on water tankers or local boreholes. Mulimo Waonemotwa, SABC News, Hammanskraal.
Right, so on the back of that, joining us today virtually is Benoit Leroy, CEO of the South African Water Chamber. Benoit, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us here on the SABC at this hour.
Afternoon, Lisa, and to viewers.
So additionally, we also have a voice note from Salwi Bukaba, the City of Tshwane's spokesperson. We'll share the city's perspective and also provide updates on the ongoing efforts, Benoit. But perhaps before we get to that, I just want to look at what happened in terms of the package that came through just before our chat now. Hammanskraal facing severe water challenges for years, exacerbated by the recent cholera outbreak. From your expertise, what are the main reasons that we are seeing such a serious water crisis there?
So I think it took 2 decades to get there. So anybody who thought we'd sort it out in less than a year, I think that's politics in water, unfortunately. We wish they would, but they can't. And I think there's a few words that are incorrectly used. It's not a package plant. Package plant is for a few hundred cubic meters, so a few 100,000 liters. This plant is going to do 50 million liters a day. Okay, that is really big. But the region needs 90 million liters a day. It's currently producing 12.5 with the first module. It's a modular plant. If it was a package plant, we wouldn't have had the geotechnical rock deep issues and all that, because package plants are offloaded a truck and connected, put onto a concrete slab or plinth and connected to the system, and the system gets up and running. So I think, the package plant thing I think it's a political a term that was used to try and pacify people, but unfortunately the promise has all been broken and still broken as we sit. The other side is, we've been warning about this for a while, is the distribution system. So the water network hasn't been used for 2 decades. And as you see in Johannesburg, Joburg is busy collapsing. This collapsed a long time ago. Now to think that you can put new water at 1/10 of the rate that you need, and you're going to fill the system, and that the system doesn't leak, and that the system doesn't need flushing, I think is actually quite worrying, because, we've always said water is very complex compared to moving electrons for electricity. And this is the reality. So unfortunately, the people involved are not really, I think, able to, we need an engineer, technical people, technologists, scientists to be actually communicating the reality, with the communities. Unfortunately, politicians have stepped in. We have politicians for different reasons, not for this. But it's highly technical. I don't see this being resolved, until the end of next year. And still, if it is resolved, it's 50 of the 90 megalitres that's required. So it's a very complex and intricate story. And unfortunately, people have been given stories and stories and stories. They've broken all the trust now. People don't believe anything that's the truth. So what would it be saying?
Well, Benoit, it is highly technical, and you're right. The trust factor has been breached at this point. And I mean, I'm just looking at government's own blue drop, green drop, and no drop reports. I mean, we saw some of the stats coming through on that front, painting a very bleak picture for our country at large. But perhaps before we delve into that as well, I just want to look at some of the priority areas when it does come to improving water quality and even infrastructure in communities, such as Hammanskraal. What should be focused on at this point?
Well, firstly, clearly, we don't have the skills in place. We need to put the right skills in place, and we need to put the right non-political leadership in there. The political leadership is one issue. So to me, I equate it to the board of a company. Get the right people in there, whoever they are. People vote for that. Then what you need is the right leadership in the management of the situation. And unfortunately, we don't see those people. I do believe they exist in the metros, because the metros haven't lost all their skills. They've lost the majority, but not all of their skills. And we need to get the right leadership in place, the right technical expertise. You need the young, the old, the greybeards, etc. And a lot of very qualified people. Unfortunately, the experience is lacking, because for 20 years we've done nothing. This is the reality that's coming to roost. We warned it in 2002, and we were dismissed. And unfortunately, so it's a leadership issue. It's not only technical skills on paper. It's actually, the experience of having seen how things go wrong, how you get them right, how you rectify them, etc. And water is a dynamic thing, and sanitation is not something that goes on off like electricity. It's quite complex. People have not worried about it, but now the chickens come home to roost. And quite honestly, I don't see the A team. We need to have the A team involved in here. So the very best global resources have to be involved. This is like you're talking to me virtually now. We're able to tap into these. I tap in globally daily, with various resources, very well known, all over the world, from China to the US to Europe, etc. And there's no reason why we can't do that. I don't see that happening either. Maybe it's been kept behind the scenes, but the practice is not visible and over. So the PR job is actually quite bad. The technical work is not right. And companies who are behind this work, and they're doing what they're contracted to do. But the puzzle has to come together. And as we've seen with the power station, the components were correct, but the way it was put together was very poor. And that's where government has come in and has actually failed in virtually all of our basic services, as we speak at the moment. But to rectify that, we need technical skills that are competent with years of experience, training and mentoring the next generation so we can get this going. Because we have 200 kilometers of water network at least. And then there's the water board sanitation that is to be kept separate, etc. This is a complex issue, and I think what we're seeing is a microcosm of what's happened in South Africa, and that's why eThekwini is where it is, because it's 40 or 50 billion rands worth of damage has not been resolved for over 2 years. Hammanskraal is a microcosm of exactly that. So, I'm unfortunately, I call it ineptitude, on steroids, and hopefully that will start shaking the tree and getting us to actually get things done properly, because this is not the right time of the year for people to be suffering like this. It's really tough.
No, absolutely. Speaking of that microcosm, it being a microcosm of the macro in the country, before we get there, I did allude to this earlier on in my introduction that we're just also going to be getting some responses from the city of Tshwane with regards to their actions. So Sabi Bukabe is from the city. Let's take a listen in to some of the plans they've highlighted in response to what you prioritize. Let's listen in and weigh in and assess the feasibility.
What we indicated was that at least 80% of water is ready to be consumed. However, there's the 20% where we have taken samples and that water has been taken for testing. The outcome of the result was that there's still some turbidity. In other words, the quality of the water is not safe for consumption. We had hoped that we would get the results on the 23rd by close of business and that the water would be declared safe for drinking. However, the outcome was negative. So we are cautioning the people to not consume the water until we issue a directive indicating that the water is safe for drinking. Numerous tests are being conducted, and as soon as we get the nod from the technicians and the scientists indicating that the water is safe for consumption, we would inform the communities of Hammanskraal. We had hoped that the people of Hammanskraal would get an early Christmas, but that did not happen. It's best to err on the side of caution than to allow people to consume water. And we have a repeat of what happened with the cholera outbreak, which occurred in 2023. It is regrettable that we find ourselves in this situation. We had hoped and had worked hard to ensure that before the end of this year, the people of Hammanskraal would receive clean drinking water.
All right, so Benoit, you've heard it. I mean, as you alluded to, it's the wrong season to be having such water woes. But they are rather staying on the side of caution. Sabi Bokabe, the City of Tshwane spokesperson, saying people should be advised not to be consuming water because the water is not safe for consumption. But there's also multiple tests that are being run given the samples that have been taken. The City of Tshwane working on a 4-phase plan as well to resolve the water issues. Ultimately, which is expected to be completed by mid-2025. But the main challenges that they might be facing at this point in executing their plan successfully, given what has been echoed, from your vantage point, what are you witnessing?
I'm struggling to understand the 80%, 20%. So water samples, generally speaking, have to comply at 99%. So I don't know if the incorrect terminology is being used, but if you look at the Rand Water, eThekwini, Cape Town Metros, for example, roughly 99% complies to the SANS 2415 potable water standard. And that's what it needs to be. So if you're at 80%, you're very, very full. Or is it 80% of the system that's complying to the 99% rule and 20% not? It could be that the entire reticulation system needs repairing. And that could take literally months, if not longer, to do that. So, what is the situation? Where have you measured the quality? So what's leaving the plant? So I would say, firstly, leaving the plant has to be 99, something, if not 100% compliant. Okay. Then at various points in the distribution system, you will have reservoirs, water towers, etc. Then the quality has to be tested there. What is the difference between the quality from there to the plant? And that system that connects it is the problem. So we need a map. This is all GIS, it's geolocated. So we just need to see on a map exactly what you're saying, because then people will start understanding what the real picture is. At the moment, people don't understand this. We have to make it understandable for the average person who just worries about what comes out the tap. How does it get there? So, it's very difficult to comment. I think that at ground zero, I don't think they've made any progress on, in actual fact, getting water to the people. They've worked on the production plant. It's one of the 5 modules which will produce altogether, the five modules will produce 50% of the water they need. So we're at 8, 9, 10% of where we need to be. But the distribution system is, so we've looked at the heart, and now the veins and arteries we're finding are clogged. And you might need to replace them. You might need to flush them with various technology. That can take absolute months. Remember, nothing was done for nearly 2 decades. Yeah. So it's quite difficult to actually understand where the problems are, because everybody focuses on the so-called package plant, the modular plant, production unit. But that's part of the story. We have to look at the A to Z. And I would urge the city to actually do that and to share the map, where the reservoirs are, where the issues are, and where they're not, so people can understand where they stand today and where the progress can actually come from. Because it might be we can reinstate parts of the distribution system, for example. It could be the reservoirs like Johannesburg, 25% just leaks so much you can't get water out of it. Yeah. So, and where there's leaks, there's going to be E. coli and ingress, etc. So it's quite a complex situation, but I think we need to put all the cards on the table so we can understand this, because we've got exactly the same in half the other metros. Absolutely no different.
Benoit, thank you for those remarks. I believe that we have a call on the line. Leslie from Gauteng wants to also weigh in. Let's take a listen and perhaps you could also respond. Leslie, if you can hear me, welcome to the show. Thank you for your time with us here on the SABC. What would you like to echo in response to the conversation being had at this hour?
Yes, thank you for taking my call, and thank you for having me, and thank you for your viewers. Firstly, I'm very disappointed with the government, especially in the issue of water. It's not only Hammanskraal, even us here in south of Johannesburg, central Johannesburg, we've been experiencing that. So the government, they are not taking the community very serious. They should invest more in such crises. I mean, we have a lot of foundations in the country, like your Gift of the Givers. They can easily help people from Hammanskraal, giving them water every day, make sure that people are getting those basic needs. So now, because of the government, they don't even care. As long as their own interests are covered, they don't worry about people. So I'm very, very much disappointed because these are basic needs. The weather is not conducive now. The rain is raining and it's hot at some point. So people, they need to refresh this water. And there's a lot that you need to do. You wash your clothes, drink water, wash, and everything. So there's a lot. So I think the Minister of Water and Sanitation need to step up here and make sure that people of Hammanskraal are being attended as a matter of agency. Thank you so much.
All right, Leslie, thank you for those remarks. Benoit, so obviously what Leslie echoing there, it's not just limited to Hammanskraal. And it's to my point earlier on about the blue drop, green drop, no drop reports that came out, because that future was painted rather bleakly. In terms of the drinking water quality, we know that almost 50% of drinking water systems in the country is not drinkable. For a water-scarce country, this is worrisome. So let's analyze that further, also based on what Leslie has just echoed.
He brings up two very important points, for me. One is that Hammanskraal is a microcosm, yes, agree. But the other one is that we need over R1 trillion to reinstate our water security in South Africa. And about 114 billion is committed. So just to put into context, and the number in Gauteng is anywhere between 50, we saw 280 billion a month ago. So we're talking, irrespective of what government wants to do, you've got to find the money. And the money doesn't come from the ratepayer or the taxpayer. There is no more money there. So that's the first thing. I think, the second thing is the allusion to national government, to Department of Water and Sanitation as a silver bullet. Firstly, they don't have the capacity to actually regulate their water now. Otherwise, 97% of the sewage plants would not be non-compliant and 50% of the water systems reaching total collapse. So they're a regulator, custodian, and operator of our national water dams, the big dams, not the small farmers dams, the really big dams. So that capacity is lacking over there. So with all the best will in the world, they are not coming to save the cities. GDP, local economy, water services, basic services, electricity, waste, etc., are all carried out by local government. The capacity has to be reinstated. The problem is, how do you attract people to work in an environment that is politically unstable and that is quite challenging, and there isn't the money to do the work you want to do? So it's quite a conundrum. There are solutions to it, but the thing is, national government is not the savior. They generate policy, they regulate, and they're struggling to regulate at the moment. So local government has to sort it out. But the sector's been waiting for 20 years to actually do that. And that's what we're trying to do in the water chamber, is to get the two to talk the same language, to work together, to start reinstating it. We haven't started that journey, unfortunately. eThekwini is trying to do some public-private partnerships, but has not managed yet. We've seen that Joburg Water is being overt, so is Equally and Tshwane, in providing their numbers to the dashboard that Department of Water Sanitation is doing. There's a weekly and a monthly dashboard, which is really good. We never saw that before. Starting to share, etc., but we have not started on the work. And Hammanskraal is where we've started the most, and we can see it's unsatisfactory. But in City of Johannesburg, General, Ekurhuleni and Tshwane, we have not started the remediation work. There's over R1 trillion we have to raise. And the terms and conditions are not acceptable for pension funds to invest, you know. And the pension funds will invest where they get a return. So they'll do it into a road, they will do it into a shopping center, for example, but they were not going to do it into this water infrastructure until we have stability in the system. So it's a complex conundrum. We need political stability, we have to destabilize the system, and then we have to make the arena amenable for investors to come in and make sure that national government controls this so that we don't land up privatizing in an unregulated manner. It has to be regulated to be fair and sustainable. And the Western world in general, including China and Japan, have got virtually completely privatized water services. It works very well. There are some failures, but they are not the rule. It works extremely well. So we've got to work together on this.
Okay, well, it's going to take all of us at this point to mitigate against some of those challenges because, as you said, it's complex. There's many issues coming to the fore beyond a lack, sentiments about a lack of political will. It's about the issue of implementation, but also having the correct leadership skills, but also just looking at, the mismanagement that's come about, the corruption as well, and so a need for stronger regulation as well. But Benoit, the conversation has to end there for now. Thank you for your time. We will continue with more perhaps into the new year. Again, thank you to Leslie for also interacting with us there, and Salvi Bokaba from the city of Tshwane in response to some of the plans based on the sample testing that had also occurred. So as we continue to follow the progress in Hammanskraal, it is clear that a concerted effort is needed from all sectors to address the ongoing water challenges and ensure that the safety of all communities are adhered to. So as we leave that conversation there for now, we're going to take a quick ad break. We'll be back for the second hour of the show just at the top of the hour, so don't go anywhere. You're watching SABC News live from Johannesburg. Your headlines at this hour. All 6 suspected illegal miners have been arrested in Riverview, south of Johannesburg, following a shootout with police.
The impression is that our parole officers are doing their work, but the problem is that the parolees do take chances.
National Commissioner of the Department of Correctional Services, Makgoti Tobagale, has urged parolees to adhere to their parole conditions or face consequences. Kenya's President William Ruto has promised an end to abductions after human rights groups raise concerns over the kidnapping of government critics. All right, welcome back. We are on the second hour of the show. You're watching The Week Ahead here on DSV Channel 404, SABC News. Again, live from our studios here in Johannesburg. I'm Liesl Wilson. You can still keep the conversation going and participate with us in our various interactions. Of course, that number to interact with us is 011 714 0680 or 81 or 82. It is an honor to be with us. So let's delve into the rest of the show. So our top story now this hour, 6 suspected illegal miners have been arrested in Riverlea, south of Johannesburg, following a shootout with police. Police also recovered unlicensed firearms and ammunition as well as illegal mining equipment. Now, Gauteng Police spokesperson Mavela Masondo says the suspects face charges of attempted murder and possession of unlicensed firearms and ammunition. Gauteng Acting Premier Lebogang Maile says the police officer who allegedly shot and killed his 22-year-old girlfriend must not be granted bail. Maile has visited Chesney Patricia Kepler's family in Eldorado Park, south of Johannesburg, to convey his condolences. The 42-year-old man will appear at the Protea Magistrates Court in Soweto tomorrow. He is in hospital under police guard after he shot himself. Now, police watchdog IPID says the suspect allegedly shot the young woman who was a Gauteng traffic warden at her home. He allegedly fired several shots through the window using his service pistol following a domestic dispute. Now, National Commissioner of the Department of Correctional Services, Makgoti Thobagale, has urged parolees to adhere to their parole conditions or face consequences. Thobagale conducted an unannounced operation monitoring parolees within the Eastern Cape area. The aim of the operation was to assess the parolees' compliance with parole conditions. A number of parolees were served with notices for failing to stick to these conditions. Let's take a look.
The impression is that our parole officers are doing their work, but the problem is that the parolees do take chances, and those chances obviously will be very costly to them, because if this behavior continues, we will be left with no option but to take them back to a correctional facility. So that is the process that they are going to go through tomorrow. It's a disciplinary process, and if they don't show change in behavior, we'll have to take them back to our facilities.
High levels of poverty and unemployment have led to a drastic increase in the number of people living on the streets. Rising levels of substance abuse, especially amongst the youth, have also resulted in many becoming destitute. In some cases, mental health challenges, even domestic violence force people to take their chances on the streets.
Facing a bleak festive season, a harsh reality for many homeless people, and this time of the year, their resources are also scarce, exacerbating their plight. Even the bin pickers who are looking for scraps to sell are not so lucky. This 48-year-old is one of thousands of homeless people who are living on the streets of Pretoria.
I landed up on the street due to personal family problems. I wasn't ever part of my family. And it so happened that these things made that I lost my business.
Less shelters due to limited funding has also increased the plight of the homeless.
In the street, you are perfectly nobody. In the streets, perfectly nobody. You are just a somebody to yourself. Even the Motoko Panola Notoko Mahaying, they don't even care about us.
A study that was done by the University of Pretoria and other stakeholders during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic revealed that high unemployment is one of the main drivers of homelessness in the capital city, and the rest of South Africa is dealing with the same problem. Post the COVID-19 pandemic, not much has changed. More than 40% of homeless people land on the streets after losing their jobs. More than 20% found themselves destitute due to substance abuse like alcohol and drug addiction. And the streets of Pretoria attest to this, with more and more new faces finding themselves destitute here.
It's difficult. It's really difficult. There's some of us that are fighting to try and get our lives back. And just as you think that you start getting something together and you can focus on bigger things, you're in a situation where the people you're living with steal everything, and you just don't have the proper support from anywhere to get the right help.
What are the dangers that you face on these streets?
You can be killed at any point in time. You're surrounded by people that are abusing drugs and alcohol, and there's just no safety for you, depending on if you're lucky enough as myself to be sleeping in front of the police station.
Countrywide, over 100,000 people are living on the streets, facing grave vulnerabilities, but some good Samaritans often ease the plight of the homeless. So, if possible, give more to the needy and homeless during the holiday season as they battle to survive on these streets. Patricia Fasachi, SABC News in Pretoria.
Well, other news not this hour. The community of Riverton in the Northern Cape say they can no longer get fish from the Vaal River because the water is polluted by sewage, and they're concerned that locals who have been making a living from the fish that they catch are also negatively impacted. Some also use the fish to feed their families.
Once described as a river teeming with fish, it has now become a shadow of itself. Some locals who have been fishing in it for more than 50 years say the water contamination in the Vaal River is affecting their livelihoods negatively. A 67-year-old father of one, who has been fishing since he was 12 years old, says that the situation is frustrating.
The way we caught fish, there in beyond now, we caught fish, really we caught fish nets full of fish. But in the past couple of years, we had a battle to catch fish. Only even a small one. You can't catch a small one. There's nothing fishy in this river.
Those who used to come and fish in the river say the deteriorating state of the river due to pollution is concerning.
I think most of the people around here love of the water and fishing, and yeah, I think we need this thing, and like we can see this, it's not looking the same anymore.
Of our waters lately with the contamination of wastewater, it's getting more and more difficult to fish. And you can't really trust the fish that you catch to eat it.
Some of the local fishermen who are worried about a lack of fish say they hope something will be done soon to restore the river to its natural state. Tebogo Msimanga, SABC News in Riverton in Northern Cape.
Staying on the continent, just further afield though, Kenyan rights groups and lawyers have expressed deep concern over a new wave of abductions targeting government critics. Now, these concerns follow reports of several individuals allegedly abducted after voicing criticism of President William Ruto and his administration. Ruto has promised to end or put an end to the abductions where young activists are being targeted. All right, so welcome back. The week ahead continues. Let's continue with the Year in Review special. We're looking at one of the biggest stories of 2024. It's the Stilfontein mine standoff. In mid-November, media reports started surfacing of an estimated thousands of illegal miners refusing to come out from underground at a disused mine in the Northwest Province. Those rescued efforts continue to date, with a handful of miners resurfacing every couple of days. Now, SABC News reporter Tabiso Moss has spent weeks on the site and filed this report detailing this coverage of the story that has made global headlines.
It's December and the Stilfontein story still continues. I started covering this story on the 13th of last month. I remember I was in Mahikeng around 10 in the morning, busy with another story concerning the ANC in the province. So my assignment editor called me and saying, "Hey Tabiso, you need to pack your bags and go to Stilfontein because you need to relieve our colleague who was busy with that story, with the story at the time." When I arrived here, I saw many police officers from different units within the South African Police Service monitoring the situation, making sure that they are present here. At the time, it was, I think, 2 days since the community members started with their retrieval operation, trying to bring those illegal miners to the surface. And the number of illegal miners at the time, we understand that at the time, one of the community volunteers went underground and he told people who were on the surface at the time at the shaft that there are more than 4,000 illegal miners who are still underground. The number that was later disputed by the police, saying that number is far-fetched. According to them, there is hundreds of illegal miners who are still underground, but disputing the more than 4,500 number. So the story continued like that, where we have seen the community members, undertaking this labor-intensive, very dangerous operation, by the way, to try to bring these illegal miners to the surface. By weekend, that week of, I think it was around the 15th of November, they have rescued around 12 illegal miners, because on a daily basis they were rescuing 3 to 4 illegal miners, and they told us that it's taking them about 30 to 45 minutes to bring one illegal miner to the surface. So that's how the story continued.
There were a lot of NPOs and NGOs that came on board. The Matlasedi, the Makua, the Red Cross, you can name them, even the local business people from Kuma, even from Stilfontein. They were helping, they were donating some quality, they were donating some food for the volunteers. So we were very thankful for those people who came on board when they've heard that there's a crisis, there's a disaster. Because even now we are just afraid, we are just amazed why this thing was not declared a disaster, because it's a disaster.
Second week, when I was covering the story, we have seen the Minister of Police, Senzo Mchunu, visiting Stilfontein. You'll remember that when I first arrived here, we were not allowed nearer to the shaft. We were reporting about the proceedings. Maybe we were 500 meters from where the retrieval operation was happening. So we only started to access the shaft or get nearer to the shaft where this retrieval operation was happening when Police Minister Senzo Mchunu started to visit the shaft to conduct an oversight inspection. He was accompanied by the Northwest Premier at the time, Lazarus Mukhosi, and also Deputy Minister of Police, Kassel Matale. That's the first time when I started to, come closer to the shaft and see for myself how deep is this shaft, or how the shaft looks like, since I was covering the story maybe a few meters away from the shaft. We have seen more and more organizations also coming here. One of those organizations being Sanko, that has also been pleading with the government to try to assist in the situation, to try to make sure that those illegal miners who are still underground are brought to the surface safely. And here is one of the Sanko representatives.
It's really heartbreaking. Even worse now, realizing that the situation has got to as far as it has gone since we received the letters that we received last week, which were talking about these people now resorting to eating human flesh. We have taken this as a crisis and some sort of an emergency, but there has never been any agency displayed or shown by our own government and our own provincial leadership.
We were going around here, we came across some of the community members who their loved ones are also part of these illegal miners who are still underground. And now they had to, this family member that has been affected, one of their own is underground. He says that they spent, their festive season was bleak because one of their own did not spend Christmas with them.
I will say I hate 2024 because it's been a very hectic time. We didn't even enjoy. It was kind of us mourning because we were wondering if we are celebrating. Is he still alive? What's happening about him? Yes, so it's been a sad moment. We are not enjoying this festive at all. And it's a first Christmas not being with him. So it's a very sad moment for us as a family.
This is my first year as a field reporter. For all these years I've been doing not only as a field reporter but also it was my first year on television as a television reporter, because all these years I've been doing studio journalism or anchoring a current affairs show on radio. So for me, this story was a big challenge because it's one of the major stories, one of my highlights for this year. So it kept me on my toes because the story was developing each and every minute. Like you'll have many people visiting here at the shaft. When you are focusing on some of the stakeholders that are coming here, you also need to update the story about the number of illegal miners that are brought to the surface. So it kept me on my toes. But also, most importantly, it also made me realize that that this thing of illicit mining is real here in South Africa. In a nutshell, I will say that has been my experience as a first timer when it comes to television reporting and also as a field reporter. So that's where I can end it as far as the Stelfontein story is concerned of illegal mining.
Right, so we're going to continue now as we wrap up the year. We have invited some of our regular faces that you see on the channel, some as anchors here in studio, others as reporters out in the field. And I'm glad to say that two of them have taken some time off from their holidays to share their memorable news moments of 2024 because it's all love. So SABC News anchor Bongiwe Zwane joins us now virtually. And in studio, we have Calvin Dludla, who always see out and about in the streets speaking to regular people. Good afternoon to the both of you. Honestly, thank you for making time to be with us. It has been an illustrious year, to say the least. Bongi, I'm going to start with you because you are joining us virtually. We can see in the background you are not in studio. But the highlights for this year for you, there's been so much. Lots. Obviously looking at the scenarios for South Africa, unprecedented. We saw election coverage, sleep was minimal. We had the Paris Olympics, social cohesion, nation building. But I mean, you have been hauling it out this entire year. What stood out for you?
Good afternoon, Lisa, and I'm glad it's Calvin who's joining me because I'm in our hometown, so he knows exactly where I am. So it's really, what a year, hey? And you speak about sleep. I only realized 2 days ago just how minimal sleep we've all been getting this year. It's been quite intense, I must say. And some of the stories for me that were big, I mean, one definitely has to be our elections, Liesel, because we didn't know how things were going to go. We had no idea, but there was a talk of an arrangement like we have right now, but also others were talking about the ANC dipping. And then you also had a number of other experts as well who were talking about the fact that, no, the ANC may just be able to hold its own and be above 50. So certainly there was a lot of people on edge about what would happen. And then you saw Mkhonto weSizwe coming into the fray as well. So it was one of those elections that you knew that even if you were not on set at the time or you're not on air, you always needed to be glued to SABC in order to get, minute by minute updates, because everything was happening. I was listening to Thabiso, for example, now saying that while in Stilfontein, it was so busy that he had to be kept abreast with each and every single, update and make sure that as the story develops, he also develops with the story. It was exactly the same thing with the elections, because the elections were happening, political parties were at the rock, everything was happening. You needed to know, even if you're not on air at the time, you needed to know and listen to what they have to say, because therein lay the answers and what our country would look like post the elections. And a number of them were talking about this arrangement. You think about Helen Zille, for example, who already was talking about this government of national unity, a coalition of some sorts. And now here we are. And I still say that was one of the most memorable stories. And you think about Pravin Gordhan as well, his funeral, that was another big story.
Yes, thanks, Bongi. We're going to delve into that a little bit more, because you were obviously in his hometown. You were covering that. But Calvin's also here in studio. Calvin, you heard she's in your hometown, joining us at this hour. But Calvin, you've been reflecting human interest stories throughout the year, come rain or shine. And so some of the stories that stood out for you, I mean, some of them were very disheartening as well. Who can forget, the Eskom meter deadlines? You've also seen the prison raids, the Orange Farm shooting as well. There were also some highs. What do you remember from this year?
Thank you very much, Leslie, and good afternoon to Bongiwe. Bongiwe is in Newcastle.
Yes.
I don't know why she's not saying that she is in Newcastle.
She's on holiday.
That's my hometown. She is in Newcastle, and she's spending holidays there. Thank you very much, Bongiwe, for visiting my hometown. Okay, I think let me start by saying that there has been some highs and lows as a reporter, because I joined the team in February, at the end of February. So this was something that I liked, going out and talking to people. I remember when I was still doing Zulu News as a producer, I always wanted to go and cover stories. And I have to tell you about the prison raid.
Yes.
Johannesburg Correctional Center, popularly known as Sun City. I went there with our video journalist, Qabi Njogweni, at night. It's cold there, and you could imagine waking people up at around 11, telling them to get out, and some of them are not aware of what is happening, and some of them are old, as you can see on these visuals, a raid in Sun City. That's one of the stories that I covered, and I enjoyed so much. The feeling or the feel of the prison is different from where we are. You could hear sniffer dogs, police officers. You could see prison wardens asking officials to get up, and it's tough to be in that place. And I remember very well in that crossing, I think I was on air for almost 30 minutes, Listen, in that space. And I was talking alone. I didn't know that actually when you are a reporter, you don't have to have a guest at some point. You need to talk alone, and you have to make sense to people at home. I was like, no, they're saying, Calvin, please, we are letting you. Please be on standby. We are coming to you. And I'm not familiar with the place, and the place is notorious. As you know, Sun City is not a place like you can just go and chill. It was scary. And people, police officers getting there, trying to get things, as you can see, cell phones and other items that were not allowed, contrabands that were not allowed to be in that prison. It was cold, as you can see. I was wearing a jacket and that, and people crying in that space, saying that they are being abused. And we have to report. We had to report facts. We had to be factual. We had to be on point. Fortunately for SABC, when I watch this clip, it's one of the most watched videos on YouTube. So I enjoyed it. It was training because I had to come back at the office and package for Morning Live. It was training, but I told myself that, okay, this is the job that I chose, and I will make sure. Fortunately enough, the person that I was with, Kabinjo, when it did the wonders.
Bongi's nodding there because she remembers that raid very vividly as well. And yes, you are very committed to your craft. I mean, you're the passion, the work that you put in, the research. That's why you're also entrusted as well. So, Calvin, thank you for sacrificing your sleep, because I know that that has helped a lot in terms of being that bridge, right, for our viewers. Bongi, you alluded to this earlier on, but you were part of the integral coverage of Pravin Gordhan, who passed away from cancer. And then a month later, Tito Mboweni passed away as well. So this year's, there's been lots of losses and goodbyes. Any moments that stood out for you with regards to some lessons learned from them as leaders? What we should be using perhaps to navigate for the year to come as well?
Lizo, I have to say to Calvin, well done. I remember that raid very well. We covered it extensively on the Full View, and he did a sterling job, as always. And you think about these two funerals, Lizo, and you listen to some of the speeches from the people that were speaking at these funerals, particularly when you listen to Pravin Gordhan's funeral and you listen to Tito Mboweni's funerals. People spoke about, one, they were minimalists. They were stickler for processes. They made sure that it was not about them, but it was about the job at hand. And speaker after speaker was speaking about their selflessness, that in order to be a leader, it's important to have that servant heart and understand that it's about the country and it's not about just your personal ambitions. And yes, I remember at Tito Mboweni's funeral, for example, when I was watching the visuals because I was covering it for radio, they were talking about his cooking skills, of course, that we all, that we all lambasted, we lambasted on social media and how late he used to cook. But also, you listen to a number of people who are talking about him just as a leader, that at times you could mistake the two men. And that would be the late former Public Enterprises Minister and the late former Finance Minister, Tito Mboweni, as well as Pravin Gordhan. You could mistake them for arrogance. But people were saying it is not because they were arrogant. In fact, those who were speaking were saying it's not arrogance. It is, in fact, processes. It was, in fact, the fact that they were strict. I remember sitting at the ICC in Durban when we were waiting for the procession to arrive for the funeral service to start. And I asked about 3 different colleagues in cabinet of his. And I said, what time are we starting? Because the program is not saying what time. And they said to me, Bongiwe, it has to start at 10 o'clock. That man, when you have a meeting with him or you have a phone call with him or anything with him, if you do not start in time, and if it's longer than it needs to be, then it would be a problem. And they said that program needs to be 2 hours max. We need to leave because we do not want to do things that he would not have liked while he was still on earth. And it tells you about the quality of leader that he was. And a number of his colleagues were talking about the fact that going into the new year, they're hoping that they can at least be even 10% of the kind of leader he was, be selfless, put South Africa first, and not make it about, themselves. So those were some of the qualities that as you listen to even his family speak, they were talking about, I remember his daughter saying, South Africa will remember you as a minister, as a struggle, stalwart and all of that. But I remember my father who used to make sure that I must pass maths. I must make sure that I do well in public speaking and all of that. That's the man I remember. So a man of different hats, Tito Mboweni as well. You listen to the kids, a man of different hats. But certainly one thing stood out, Liesl. It was the kind of leadership that they embodied. And that spoke volumes for many people who attended those funerals.
Well said, Bongi. Absolutely. Thank you for those remarks as well. Calvin, you heard Bongi also praising your stellar work. It's been a breakthrough year for you. Many people wondering why you've taken a liking to relaying human interest stories, given, some of the other beats that are available. How did that come to resonate with you?
Thank you very much, Bongiwe. Bongiwe knows that from her previous job that I won't be able to mention.
Yes.
We know each other from there. And she used to encourage me on being serious when it comes to news. I'm a newsreader. I think you know I'm a newsreader. I also read news. So I saw that reading news is not enough when it comes to news gathering. Because you are expecting people to come to you with packages, and you just translate intros from English to isiZulu. So that becomes a hindrance, a challenge for you if you want to be a news gatherer. But what I have learned is that there are set stories outside. There are so set stories outside, and fortunately enough, SABC this year managed to cover some of them, almost all. I remember when I was covering the Orange Farm shooting.
Yes.
We were in Centurion when my editor called us with our video journalist, Herbert Memela, to go to Orange Farm where people were shot. When we went there, you know, as a human being, you have emotions, and unfortunately you can't show your emotions to people that are already crying, because that would mean you are weak, and you are making them weak again, and they will cry in front of you. So I had to be strong. I remember when I was interviewing the survivor of the incident, she told us that the person that was shooting, he shot people that were in front of her. She had to try and pretend that she is dead, listen, so that that person can jump her and shoot another person that was next to her. It was so sad, because a person is holding a firearm and is shooting randomly, shooting almost everyone that is there. Just to recap for our viewers, a tavern owner had a fight with a person that was visiting that family, and that person had to go home, and that tavern owner went home to fetch a firearm, and he shot everyone.
Yeah, some at point blank range.
Yes, and this lady, as you can see on our visuals now, told SABC News that she had to take blood from a dead person and paint blood so that she can pretend as if that person is dead. It was sad. I remember very well when I did that interview with Oliver Dixon. I was about to cry because I'm also a human being. As much as I'm a journalist, but I'm a human being and I have emotions. Yes. And at that day, I told myself that, okay, I need to find ways of being strong when I'm covering stories. They shot a disabled baby in the very same story. And, you know, people were visiting, others were visiting, they were not even staying there. I remember when they told us that a neighbor had to come because they were paying lobola in that house. So that person, when he shot people, he shot a disabled baby. And as a journalist, you need to be strong. You need to make sure that your emotions doesn't overcome you as a person, because people are relying on you at home. I remember when I was closing, I had to come back to a camera to close that interview. My eyes were teary. And I told the presenter that, you know, as reporters, we cover stories every day on normal basis. But there are stories, Lisa, that when you cover them, you become helpless. Yeah. And you wanted to cry. I remember even other colleagues were telling me that, Calvin, you need to go for counseling.
So I actually wanted to ask, you know, with some of those issues and emotions that arise, given what you are witnessing, how do you debrief and unpack all of it for yourself? How do you take time to, you know, just to also process and heal from that as a journalist? Yeah,
it's difficult, I have to say, because at some point when you are sleeping, you need to think about it. You need to think about it and try by all means that it does not affect you. It will affect you, Lizel, but you need to be strong about it. And you might be sent to a different story tomorrow, a worse one, compared to the one that you covered yesterday. So you need to keep going. And it was difficult, I have to say, because when I spoke to that person, you know, as journalists, we take contacts and we keep on communicating with those people, our sources, so that we can be able to get more on that story. And the sad part is that you keep on nagging them about what is happening, because you need the developments of the story. You need to, as much as they are in pain, but as a journalist, you need a story. You need to be to have that passion, and you need to be so sincere and apologetic to them that, okay, I understand that this is the situation that you are facing, but unfortunately, as a reporter, I have this. I have to say that I didn't go for counseling, but I'm fine.
Okay. Well, you've made it this far. I mean, you've managed to see the year out. And again, thank you for your work. Bongi, I want to bring you back into the conversation. Calvin was just speaking about some of the difficulties, that come as a result of having to face some of the stark realities in our country. And I know in KZN, we've seen some of the KZN murder stats, which is even the GBVF cases around South Africa. A national crisis is what some are calling it, Talk to us about some of those stories, covering those stories, perhaps also, looking at through a female lens, the intersectional, issues that women are faced with or vulnerable groups are faced with in South Africa. How do you, go back home, unpack, debrief it for yourself, particularly when you look at some of the alarming stats coming through? Okay, Bongi, we're just going to reestablish that connection with Calvin. But now you've obviously followed stories. We know that they don't just end, okay, Bongi's back. Bongi, if you can hear me, Calvin was relaying some of the harsh realities, that he has to face and deal with on the field, especially when the stories are grim. One has to process these emotions. I was asking him how he does it. But for us as well, we're looking at some of the stats, GBVF in our country, KZN murder stats even for that matter, just before Christmas. These are alarming stats. I wonder how you deal with that, how you process that for yourself day in, day out, right? And perhaps also try and stay as objective as possible.
Sure, Liesl, that's one of the toughest questions. And I think that you and I can relate because we read these intros, we watch these packages, and then we have to almost like compose ourselves for the viewers and not show that something's going wrong. It's so hard. It's very hard, I must say. I've had stories where people would send me messages and say, your eyes are teary. Are you okay? Oh. It is because there's a human being on the other side of the camera, and that's us. And when you see a child, you're a parent, you're a sister, you're an uncle, you're an aunt, it's hard to hear of a 5-year-old being murdered, to hear of a man taking a gun or stabbing. Think about that story, for example, that Sipho Lawrence story that was trending. And you put yourself on the shoes of that woman who had no idea that would happen, right? And then you think about his state of mind at the time. And you ask yourself, now a child is left without parents because of such. And it's one of many stories that we keep on hearing about in our country each and every single day. It is so difficult to process what's going on. And at times when you're sitting there as an anchor, you have all these questions, you have all these conversations that you have with activists and experts and all of that. But ultimately, when you come off set and you take off your earpiece and your mic and everything, it's heavy. I don't want to lie. It's heavy because you have to now almost like detach from what you've just been reading the entire time, while at the same time, you can't be desensitized because we need to have the urgency to, really inform the viewers that this is a serious scourge and it needs to be dealt with urgently. So as an anchor, you try to detach yourself emotionally, but other times it's difficult. It really is. But other times you do well. But it's really something that is a fine balancing act. And I'm sure you'll echo the same sentiments because it's a fine balance to witness. And I remember this interview that Calvin is talking about. It was so bizarre that how does somebody do this? But at the same time, you listen to a woman who says, I've had to pour blood over myself in order to ensure that I appear as dead. Then you see families come and break down on camera while reporters are out doing crossings. And then you ask yourself, okay, after this, I now have to, do a link and seem like I'm composed and everything is okay. So it's a very fine balance that we have to strike. But I must thank the viewers Because the viewers are very accommodating, I must be honest. They're very accommodating, even when they can see that you're struggling. They do send kind words. So they also make it very easy to bear. And the teams that we work with, we work with amazing people, from the control room to the floor to everywhere. We work with the most amazing people who are very quick with a glass of water, very quick with a tissue, very quick with anything when you need it. So that support system is also critical, because it's not only just an anchor. Yes, it's an anchor you see, but there's a community around us that really makes us be able to bring the news and makes it at least a bit easier to bear.
No, absolutely, Bongi. Couldn't have said it any better. It's the week ahead, so I need to also look at the week ahead, and time is running out. So just very quickly, what are you looking forward to the most? I mean, you're on holiday now, so we're looking forward to having you back. But when you do return, when you do come back, what's going to be some of those exciting things you're looking forward to?
Can I just say, more human interest stories from Calvin, more positive news, more stuff that gives us hope about our nation, and just good news. Yes, there's a lot that we have to cover when it comes to the bad and all of that and the balance, but I'm looking forward to some good news.
Okay, Bongi has said it. Calvin, what do you want to reply on the back of what she's echoed?
Thank you very much, Bongi. Well, happy holidays. I know they will treat you well at home. Newcastle is your home from now. Happy holidays. And Lizel, what I can say is that we are looking forward to now New Year. Yes. I'll be deployed in Hillbrow on the 31st at night, just to monitor the situation. People throw things, their equipment, they throw their fridges out from their flats and everything during the 31st, on the 31st at night before they cross over to the new year. I don't know why. So I'm doing that. I'll be there on the 31st to monitor the situation. What I'm looking for I think I need to grow more. As a journalist, as a reporter, because this is what I like. This year I had challenges of maybe the call time. Sometimes it's 6 a.m. You need to be here early as possible. But I think we will try as a SABC News to make sure that we deliver proper news to our viewers.
Because it's all about the work needing to be done well, and needing to be done well with all of us in mind. And I think that is something that we are committed to here. Bongi, thank you. Enjoy the last few moments of your holiday. We'll catch you soon. Calvin, thank you as well. You owe us some meat from Kwamai Mai. You are not off the hook of that one. But Bongi Wezwane, SABC News anchor, as well as Calvin Dlula, a reporter, chatting about some of the highs and lows of this year, some of the stories they've covered, and of course what they're looking forward to as we enter the new year. Thank you to them for joining us at this hour. Let's take another ad break and be right back after this. Welcome back. We're going to continue now with more news. The South African Weather Service has issued a regional weather forecast for today. A yellow level 2 warning is in effect for severe thunderstorms, with heavy downpours and strong winds expected to cause localized flooding in the low veld of Mpumalanga, Limpopo, particularly in the early morning. So additionally, extremely high fire danger conditions are also anticipated over the eastern and the central parts of the Western Cape province, whilst a heat wave with persistently high temperatures is expected in the northwestern parts of the Eastern Cape. And as they're joining us now in studio to provide some insights on the current weather situation, what residents should also be preparing for, is SABC News meteorologist Mpora Simpi. Mpo, the gift. Thank you for joining us. We're looking at some of these terminologies that come through, and obviously in and around the country, there's different weather phenomena occurring. Unpack that for us. What does this ultimately mean for people heading into this week?
Look, it simply means that we are going to continue getting those rainfall that we've been seeing, especially over the central parts of the country, stretching all the way up north over Limpopo and also Mpumalanga throughout the week. And also moving towards, we have two different parts of the country that are getting different types of conditions. Well, the central part and the eastern part is getting those rainy conditions behind, because we have a trough that's bringing moisture from the tropic that's just sitting over that interior of the Northern Cape. Now, behind that trough, that's where we're getting those dry and windy conditions, possibilities of fires, and also that heat wave that you're talking about over parts of the Eastern Cape, and also those high persistent rain, temperature that we're getting over parts of the Western Cape. That is because of that's the conditions we're getting behind the trough. But ahead of the trough, that's when we're getting moisture, instability, and that's where we're getting all those rainy conditions, and also that warning that we're talking about, that level 2 warning of severe thunderstorm over Limpopo and Mpumalanga.
So, I mean, I was saying it's a blessing. Rain is a blessing, but we know too much of a good thing is not good. We are edging closer to the 31st of December, and people are going to be out and about. How, in terms of those who are above the trough or on this side of the trough, what are some of those travel advisories you would caution against? Because people need to stay safe and make alternative plans then.
Look, simply when you're living in an area like Centurion, which is flood prone, you just be careful that you know that with this persistent rainfall that we're getting, we're expecting about 60% on New Year's Eve, and actually it's just 30% on New Year's. Look, with these conditions that we're getting, you just must be careful, especially if you're on the road, and make sure that you know that you get the areas which are flood prone, those bridges that can be flooded, and also make sure that when you're driving, you make sure you careful following distances to be safe. You just be patient. Let's not speed, especially if the roads are slippery and visibility is reduced. And when you are staying behind the trough, as you said, northern the Cape provinces, make sure that you know that we have some of those issues, fire issues. The fire that has been contained now in Hammanskraal, we just got a report that it is contained. But over the garden routes, there's still issues of that fire that's going there, and we're expecting more temperatures to increase over those areas, meaning that we have possibilities where we run a risk of more fires developing. So those who are praying, they need to be careful, especially over those areas as the heat wave is hitting. We just have to be careful because of now, where there's weather that is coming in, we are expecting it throughout the week. So meaning that everyone has to play their role for us to stay safe.
Paul, as we wrap up very quickly, how long are all these conditions expected to last? When can we see improvements? If we're speaking about improvements, what does that actually mean?
All right. It looks like this. In terms of the heat wave, the high persistent temperatures that we're expecting over the Western Cape and Eastern Cape and through to parts of the Northern Cape, it is expected until the 1st, meaning that after the 1st, on the 2nd, the 3rd, we're expecting temperatures to drop down just a little bit. But in terms of the rainfall, as I said, we are expecting rainfall throughout the week, especially over Gauteng, Northwest, Free State, stretching into Limpopo and also KwaZulu-Natal. It is going to rain for the rest of the week, so we can expect rainy conditions for the rest of the week.
Paul, thank you for joining us and for unpacking that. Festive greetings to you and your loved ones as well. We'll leave it there again. Thank you to Mpho Rasimpi. He is our meteorologist here at the SABC, unpacking the weather phenomenon. But we're going to take the story further. And so we're joined via Teams by Dr. Bongani Elias Sithole. He's the head of the National Disaster Management Center. We'll discuss the disaster preparedness measures in light of the severe weather forecast, how communities can also stay safe. Mr. Sithole, thank you for joining us here on the SABC at this hour, and festive greetings to you and your loved ones.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Greeting to you as well and the viewers.
Thank you. We appreciate that kindly. We heard some of the phenomenon in terms of the weather front and what we can expect from our meteorologist Mpho Sithole. So, Mpho Rasimpi, but perhaps you could speak to the warnings that now come to the fore. What are the alerts on that front? How people then should be preparing in relation to that, especially where there's thunderstorms?
Yeah, during the start of the summer season, we have reported that we'll make sure that all our disaster teams and fire services teams, they are on high alert to deal with any eventualities. Now, as and when we receive the early warnings from South African Weather Services, we then make sure that all our teams are then stationed and positioned to those areas which South African Weather Services identified as places which can be hit by the rainfall or the thunderstorms. So from our side, maybe coming back to our questions, in terms of our state of readiness, since also we've received this level 2 warning from South African Weather Services, indicating that Mpumalanga and Limpopo might be affected, but of course, normally during this time, we know that Western Cape, Eastern Cape, and other part of the Northern Cape, they tend to be affected by fires. So we've made sure that all our teams, they are on high alert in those areas so that we're able to respond.
Okay, thank you for speaking to those hotspot areas. And I know that given that it is the festive season and, you might be stretched in terms of personnel and resources, but what have you done with the local municipalities? Just ensure that there is an availability of disaster management teams during this time. Are there any issues with equipment or even budget constraints as we're speaking?
Yeah, we know that there is a challenge in terms of the budget and also the capacity constraint when you go to the local government level. But because we work with other departments and other stakeholders, when I say other stakeholders, I mean NGOs, which we normally work with, we're able to use those capacities to augment the capacity at a local government level.
And thank you for speaking to that interprovincial support as well, intergovernmental support, because it is important, particularly as you're mitigating against things on the go, right? I wonder if we're going to be looking at communications and warnings as well. I mean, that's also important. The public need to know what is happening. So to effectively adhere to that and make sure that it does reach the most vulnerable, what steps are in place on that front?
Yeah, we work very closely with the South African Weather Services. We do know that South African Weather Services, they communicate all the early warnings in all the channels and social media in terms of which areas might be affected. But also from our side, we engage provincial disaster management centers. And through the provincial disaster management centers, then we're able to reach out to the municipalities. But also from our side, we make sure that through the structures in the communities, we are able to disseminate that information to the intended recipient as well.
And what about, the long-term impact as well? Because we're obviously looking at climate change, the increasing likelihood of severe weather events occurring more often. What's your team doing on that front to revise regulations, better prepare for potential disasters as well in the long term?
Yeah, climate change, we've realized that climate change is here to stay. And on our side, we've been working with other stakeholders or academic institutions, research institutions, to make sure that they're able to advise us and also guide us in terms of how best we can enhance from the side of the technology. Maybe in the future, as we move forward, where we could use drones, because we've realized that if there are disasters and areas is being flooded, is not easily accessible. And it takes very long time to do an assessment of the area. So we can actually use technology to access those areas. So there's a number of innovations which we are exploring so that we're able to do this work smart, but also making sure that we're able to reach out to all the intended communities, of course, using the latest technology.
For speaking to some of those dynamics, I know that all we can do is obviously wait and best prepare ahead of the week. But thank you, Mr. Sithole, for joining us at this hour. Dr. Bongani Elias Sithole weighing in. He is from the National Disaster Management Center. The head there, in fact, chatting about mitigating against some of those challenges, particularly during this festive season, based on the warnings that had been issued by the South African Weather Service. And obviously looking at the collaborations between the intergovernmental departments as well as NGOs and other stakeholders to ensure that the most vulnerable are assisted and also protected and best prepared. Oh, just like that, we've come to the end of the week ahead. It's the last show for this year. It's also the last Sunday of this year. So we trust you have had a fantastic festive period, and we're also wishing you all the best. It has been an absolute pleasure for myself, Liesl Wilson, and the rest of the team. Until next time, take care. As you know, the news continues here on the SABC News. SA Today, in fact, continues with news, and they've got more top stories at the hour. Until next time, take care. It is goodbye for now from all of us.